Hey guys, welcome back to I Would Like to Have a Conversation. And in this episode, we're going to talk to Colin. And Colin coaches women with going through menopause. And we have a really good conversation on the sense of what, the husband's, the perspective of a guy, like what we should know, what we probably don't know that we need to know, how we can better support, all that kind of stuff. What do you think, Ruby?
It's good.
It's good. What do you think, Theo?
I think it's good.
It's good. That's good. What do you think, Simon? It's good. Enjoy the episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back in another episode of I Would Like to Have a Conversation. I can't remember what episode I'm up to. I think it's 8 or 9, but it doesn't matter. I'm here with Colin, and Colin is a women's health coach, would you say, when he talks with, I don't know, do you mainly work with menopausal, perimenopausal women, or is it kind of like everybody? Either way, give him a bit of an intro to you. That'd be good.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks, Chris. My name is Colin, and I'm an online fitness coach for active women over 35. And me and my team, we work with women sort of entering those perimenopausal years, whether perimenopause or postmenopause, and really kind of working together to, optimize their health, their fitness, and just get them feeling super awesome and energized and strong and feeling back like themselves. We working with their hormones as opposed to working against them type thing. So that's our little tagline, but that's what we do.
It's kind of, and we like today we want to sort of flip it on its head and talk about the perspective from their partners, from males, so males can understand it better, because we were talking about it in the DMs, and when you said it I was like, yeah, that is a fantastic idea, because it's very misunderstood. Like, we can even go down that whole route of like most research is done with men, because as soon as female has their hormonal cycle, they have to start the whole research project again, so they just didn't bother. They just did it for men, and everything we knew was based on this works for men, so it must work for everybody. And thankfully it's starting to change, but it still feels like there's a big knowledge gap. Would you kind of agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yeah, like there it is changing, which is nice, and I think there's a lot of really awesome folks in the industry that are sort of forging the way with that, but I think there's still quite a large gender gap with exercise science and physiology for women.
Yeah,
Definitely.
And what? Yeah. Well, I'm going to go through, and I think this would be a cool way of doing it. I'm going to ask you questions like I have no idea what my partner could be going through. Just in the idea to sort of tease out and give. There's guys who give a shit and want to know, can sort of. There's something you said, like, not fix the problem, which is what we tend to do. Males just tend to be, we just want to fix the thing. We are men. We want to fix your problems, and it's like they don't need it. They probably just, which is this idea of space holding I talk about in most episodes. Like, your partner probably would just want you to listen and understand, but not fix, because you might not be able to. So,
and
go.
Maybe it doesn't need fixing.
Yeah.
Maybe there's nothing actually wrong with it.
Normalizing it. Yeah, I like that. That's probably a way better approach, in the sense of taking, that flow versus force kind of thing. Just leaning into it, normalizing it, and then sets a better expectation. And then you can sort of not find, I guess could be, find an enjoyable way through it, which is kind of what you do, I would say, where you finding those bright spots and making it not so much a negative thing. It's like, this is what we have. Let's make it as good as we can make it. Does that make sense? Would you say that's how your coaching approach is? if you could say it.
I would say so, yeah. Like we're really trying to like I say, we're not trying to fix fix broken hormones or anything of that sort. We're really trying to normalize the menopause transition and just really have an open conversation about it and really just talk about all the different aspects and nuances of it and um, kind of approach it in this light of like this is a natural process. This is like a normal thing. However, there are real struggles. There is real suffering that is connected with it. Especially in our society.
Mm.
Um, so there are real problems that come as a result of going through menopause. So for us, it's really a matter of understanding what those nuances are and how we can kind of bridge the gap, in a sense of like, let's say for a woman's body, a woman who menstruates body, or a person rather who menstruates body, what their hormones used to do, what they're doing now, how that's causing issues and suffering, and really bridging that gap. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. It's about easing suffering,
Mm.
and there's no reason that women need to suffer through perimenopause. You can still thrive and feel awesome, and uh, probably getting ahead of myself
Huh.
here, but there's sort of brain changes that happen too, and where essentially, if I could just speak frankly here, just women tend to give less fucks when they're in their 40s and
Yeah.
50s, right? So it the cool thing about perimenopause uh, is you kind of get to define how you want to live life in the future, um, and that's what we're here to support. We're here to support that process. So I don't know if that answers your question, or if maybe I just got onto a tangent,
Yeah,
but
I see. That was a really good way of putting it. Like, it's kind of like I have this idea of this second act kind of thing when you get to like your 40s and 50s, where the kids might be old enough where they're looking after themselves almost and they don't need you as much. And I do like just that the way you said that, where it's kind of like you can define what this means to you, like your lifestyle, how you process things. I like that's just a really nice way of putting it. Like it still creates agency, which I would say would be a really tough thing because like you get that frustration piece when menopausal symptoms kind of kick in, where there's this huge unknown, like you don't know what's going on. It comes kind of out of the blue, and that's just from when I talk to women about it. It's like this huge frustration, like all this stuff that used to work doesn't work anymore, or whatever. And then it's like like menopause is doing this thing to me. And the way you kind of put it, I really like it because it changes it to an about agency, where it's like, no, I'm going to define what it does and how I play it out.
mm,
Which I think it's going to be careful what I say. It takes it from like a victim mentality, which
mhm,
I'm not throwing stones or anything. Like it's all about mindset. What I'm trying to say is that it's taking it from a victim to like, I can control the story that comes with it. Like, yeah, the symptoms are all going to be there and they're
mm,
all fully legit. Like most men would not ever understand the symptoms and stuff that come with it. So
mhm.
let's go with that. Like if what would be the questions you think a partner should ask when they're talking to their partner who might be just going through the early onset of menopause? Like what sort of things and they should be looking out for? What kind of questions should they, well, what kind of space should they create? I like that idea better. What kind of space should they create with their partner to support them through it without having to feel like they have to fix it? Let's go with the beginning
It's a
ish.
really Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so like I mean, my wife is kind of in her early 40s, and things are starting to shift for her. So I asked myself this too, right? And I think one question that a partner could ask their spouses,
Partner.
say if their spouse is going through perimenopause, is on a deep level, like, what does support look like for you? What does love look like for you? And how can I show up for you in a way that communicates to you that I support you, that I love you? I think as men, we, like we mentioned earlier, we want to fix things. I see my wife struggle and I want to fix it. I want to end her suffering, and I can really fool myself into believing that I have power to fix and to make her feel better, when the reality is that I'm completely powerless. I'm completely powerless over what her body is doing, and so is she, right? So, for me, a question I always ask myself, and her is like, okay, how can I support you in this? Like, what does that look like for you? I'm not the best at it. I get it wrong. I mess things up too. And like, in fact, it was just this morning, my wife was telling me about these things that are going on in her head, and right away I got into fix it mode. I was like, oh well, yeah, if we just do this, that, and the other thing, then that should solve that issue. And like, and then she was like, "Sounds like you're really trying to fix it right now, and what I really need for you to do is just listen and be there." So, um, yeah, so I think on a fundamental level, that is infinitely more helpful, when we kind of approach our partners from that space of like, what does what does support actually look like for you? You know, not what I think
Mm,
I can do to support you, but what's it look like for you? Like how do you feel supported and how do you feel loved in this situation?
I think that is such a good question. And then, like, for any, like, hopefully there's people listening. For the guys that were listening, like, the big one with that, I think, would be like, this will, like, it hurts the ego, this part, but letting go of an expectation of whatever they ask of you. Because we're so much like we want to tick a box and get a thing done. Where in that scenario, like with my wife, when I asked that same thing, I'm good and bad at it as well with Kat and trying to hold space. If you go with the idea of like, most people have their answers already, regardless of whoever they are. But in
Mhm.
this scenario, your partner would have the answers already. They're probably just looking for a space to work it through out loud because it's how the brain just tends to work through stuff better. So there's like a
Mhm.
book called Six Thinking Hats. Have you ever heard that? So it's
No.
by Edward de Bono. He's got tons of books. It was mainly built for frameworks for corporate world, but it's got like these colored hats. And I gave it to Kat, and I was like, "This could be." Just when we started seeing each other, like, this could be helpful when I keep trying to go into fix it mode for you. You just tell me what color hat to wear, and I'll just play that game. So it's kind of like it's
Like
yeah,
different
it's super
roles.
cool because it's like
Yeah.
if you're in a corporate
Yeah, yeah.
meeting, everyone's got their certain hats and they play that role, and there could be like
Yeah.
Kat's trying to make a decision. She's like, "I want you to black hat me," which is like literally do the flip side of whatever she's saying. It's like, "I want to do this." I'm like, "Oh, but just think about this,"
Mhm.
and then just do that. Or it's like the empathetic one, the white hat, where I just
Yeah.
listen and don't really do anything. I'm just like, just nod and agree and just let her work through it. So
Mhm.
it's a very easy book to read if anyone wants to read it. And then the other book I was thinking, based off what you said, is like the five love languages. Like finding
Mhm.
that thing that your partner wants or that shows them that you love them,
Yeah.
which is, I think,
Mm.
super powerful. I actually use it for coaching. I do it in the undertone with all the clients I work with. to see what it is, that thing that connects with
Oh,
them.
cool.
But I love that idea that you said, like, yeah, asking them. It's always about asking better questions, isn't it? Like asking them, like, what kind of support do you need from me through this? What would be, that's like a thing that should be asked anyway, because it would just level up the relationship, regardless of menopause or anything.
Yeah.
What would be, yeah, sorry, you go.
Yeah. And understanding that
Yes.
that can change. That can change from moment to moment, from day to day. So just because support might look like something um, in one area doesn't mean it's going to look the same um,
Yeah.
in the next day or so on. I Before we move on, Chris, I want to mention that I did poll my audience. So for me as a
Yeah.
online women's fitness coach, my audience is 99% women. So I did ask them, what I told them that I was going to be coming on to this show here, to this podcast, and that it's going to be a podcast for men, for dads. So I said, like, what is the thing that you just need to get it drilled through your husband's head? um and then maybe if you hear it from another man, maybe if the husband hears it from another man, it'll finally click in, right?
Yeah.
Because we all fucking do it. Like, let's be honest, we all, well, I mean, okay, I shouldn't say we all do it. I know I do it, which I'm not proud of. I think it's just me being a human, like, where my wife will tell me something. She like, and then we have a joke now. She's like, okay, you're planting seeds, because she'll tell me something or offer a suggestion or whatever, right? I won't fucking listen to it, and then somebody else will suggest it, like my friend Eddie will suggest it. I'm like, all of a sudden it's like this most brilliant idea, and then Chelsea's like, what the hell? Like, I told you that like 3 months ago, or whatever, right? So we so at least I do
I
this, and
do as well.
you're laughing, so I'm guessing this must hit home with you. So it's fair to say, if there's two of us here that are resonating, there's probably more. So anyways, yeah, there's a few things that they suggested I talk about, and I think in the context of,
Mm,
like, what does support look like for you? um and admittedly, I am guilty of this. I'm still working on it. I'm fully a work in progress, but that's the mental tickering and the mental load that many women, basically every woman, every mom, is just constantly, like, the mental load of the things to do, like the taking the kids places, organizing extracurriculars, like family planning stuff, house stuff, like, is quite a large burden. And I think, Chelsea has mentioned it to me when I've asked her, what does support look like for you? It's like, honestly, can you just, like, take care of, like, can
yeah.
you just fucking
Yeah.
make dinner? Like, you know what I mean? Can you just, like, um, like, that kind of thing. And I think being open to show up as equal labor, like a truly equal
Yeah.
division of labor around the household, can do wonders for a relationship. I know, I don't know if this is getting too candid or too TMI or whatever, but I know that, when initiative and do the thing, it's like almost like my wife sees me with these rose colored glasses, and then she's like, ooh,
Yeah.
this is the man of my dreams. Oh my goodness. Like, I just pick up something around the house or some things and just take the initiative.
No, I reckon we go into them because it is kind of, yes, it's to help men to understand it better, but the questions
Yeah, so that would
they
be,
mentioned or what they
I just
said
want to
is
share
probably the
that. There
things that's
are
going to
there
help
are
you
other
understand
things that they
better. And
mentioned,
on
but
that, what you just
because
mentioned,
I want to get onto your
Kat
question
and
too.
I did. Have you heard of Fair Play, the card game? This is a game changer. I think I mentioned it on another episode, but this is cool. Like it literally is about the mental load of the household. And you kind of go out to dinner, you take the cards out, and you flip a card, and then you decide who's doing that role in the house, and you put it in
No.
front of each person, and you see the stack at the end. It's not meant to be a competition, but Kat and I were laughing because her stack was bigger, and she's like, I'm meant to be the
Mm.
primary parent, and she's travels for work and does the bigger hours and stuff like that. And her stack was bigger. And I knew it because I was heard it on another podcast. I'm like, I know Kat's stack is going to be bigger, but she didn't. She was kind of like, oh, I don't know, I don't believe it. And I was like, no, it is. Let's do this card game. So it was more of an awareness tool. We started shifting things, but it's like exactly that. Where is the mental load going? And even though a lot of men will do the physical stuff, a lot of physical stuff, and we think we're doing a lot. It's a lot of physical stuff, but there's all this stuff that sits in the back of the head that is just exhausting to try and remember all the time. And it was just a really good tool for us to get awareness around it and then negotiate who will do what and where I could take things off Kat to release the mental load. And it was like 3 or 4 big things that she just wanted to. I would love it if you could do that. I'm like, hell yeah, I could do that. That's no way. It was like literally a no-brainer for me. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I could do that. There was one which I was like, but I'm doing it anyway. It was the one friction point was I love mowing the lawn, hate doing the garden. She loves doing the garden, she hates doing the lawn. The card had the garden and lawn mowing on the same card. So it sat in the middle of the table. We were just both looking at it, like shaking our head, like, no, we could just split it. But we're like, we're trying to stick to the rules. But yeah, so on that, if anyone's you can get a digital version for free. We got the physical cards. And then like you said, yeah, and you set like minimal expectations of a job done well
Yeah.
for each thing. So the expectations are already created, and then most of the time, people exceed the expectation because they want
Fair
to
play.
feel like
That's
they're
what's
doing a good
called.
job.
Yeah.
So it's a very clever tool, like something really simple, but it just opens up so much for conversation and understanding of the. And if you mental load. But yeah, I want to go into more what they said. Like, what else did they mention in the poll? Because that's probably the most important things we need to bring up, I would say.
Yeah. So some of the other things, well, the mental load came a few times, and then the other things I should have like written these down because I'm like off the top of my head. But the other thing, and actually, I think these things are all connected to each other. Because one of the things that somebody mentioned was when they're not feeling sexual, it's not about the man, you know.
Yes.
And
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, keep going.
and not not to take things personally when they're in the midst of a mood swing. That's it's
Yeah.
not about that person. How to hold space did come up too, like how to actually like
Yeah.
just be there, be like a rock, and be there for support. um yeah, admittedly, yeah, I was like, frick, why didn't I go? I thought I could remember them all, but that's just me being a man. But anyways, so it's interesting because these things are very layered and nuanced,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes.
there are,
Yes.
we can talk about, this is actually just probably a good point to just riff, right? But there are, you know, really um frustrating, challenging, and like legit cause of suffering, genitourinary symptoms that happen with perimenopause. So things like the vaginal walls sort of thinning out due to lack of estrogen, um, bladder incontinence, like the just like bladder becomes really sensitive to irritants and things like that. The actual pelvic floor musculature shifts and changes too, like it doesn't become as toned. So these can create things like vaginal dryness, like pain during intercourse and things like that. So there's that where if when we layer on top of the mental load and the mental tinkering, which there are brain changes that happen in perimenopause as well. So things like brain fog, irritability, anxiety does kind of come up. So, the struggle with the mental load is like, okay, it was unfair to begin with, right? Like, if one is in premenopause, like, okay, she could handle those things and manage all of those things. It's still unfair, let's be honest. Like, it's a very
Yeah.
patriarchal system. So it needs to be changed to begin with. However, in perimenopause, it almost like exacerbates the problem, right? So, and I think for, say, cisgendered men who are married to cisgendered women, um, I think we all know that when our wives are really stressed out and really just like sex is probably the last thing that she wants, right? But as guys, is probably the first thing that we want. So there's a bit of a disconnect there, and I think it all is kind of like layered in with each other. Like, it's all like, what I mean? They're not like separate parts. They're all so intermingled. Which is why
Yeah.
I think having the understanding of like, oh, okay, this is what my wife, I think having this conversation, right, with you here today and talking about some of these changes that happen, um, can just, shed some light into the darkness. I think you mentioned before um about reframing the like the mission statement or whatever, right? When women are going through these changes, and it's scary, but it's scary because we don't talk about it. uh
Yeah.
it's unknown, you know they're just all of these shifts and changes that are happening in their body, and they feel totally powerless over them, which, there's some of those things that are within control, but I think the fear comes from the unknown and the, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Um, and so I think part of what we do in our program is we have a big component to it that's education, where we talk openly about these things, and we educate our clients on like the shifts that are happening in perimenopause, which I think is always hilarious for me just personally, because I am me and I am a man.
Yeah.
There's part of me that's like, I just still feel a little weird about being a man and education on these topics, but here we go, right? Like, there aren't a lot of us fitness coaches who are, taking our fitness training in this context. So, so it's like, it's almost like I just feel like, hey, whatever, like, I just got to get over myself, and it's for my clients, it's not for me. So anyways, yeah.
And you've been doing it for how long now? Like 4
Um,
years?
Yeah, so I've been coaching, I've been training, personal training for over 10 years. The
Mm.
whole time I've mostly worked with women over 35,
Yeah.
and I've just in the last probably 2 years, 2 3 years, have kind of narrowed the focus and created this program just for women in perimenopause.
So yeah, it's kind of like you have a massive knowledge pool. Like that sounds really weird, but the nuances of everyone's different journey through menopause, you are seeing it all kind of play out in your coaching. So it gives you the real world experience from a male coach perspective, not from
Mhm.
obviously like feelings of it or what it actually is to be in that state, but you see it and you know the tools. So there was a roundabout way of saying like you're just really fucking knowledgeable about it. So it's really good. There was something you mentioned in it where it was like I had a thought that was like before I went on to that little tangent. Something you said that was really cool. I wanted to bring it back to like the sex thing. Like before anyone, they've probably thrown their phone away by now if they are triggered by it. But for any gent or whoever, the partner who is triggered by that, because it's like, I'm going to go from a men perspective. We can literally be lying in bed and roll over and say like, "Hey, how about it?" Like
Yeah.
it's like just like that, where it doesn't play out the same way for women. It's like it's got to be, like we said, it's almost like planting the seed. And the way I'm kind of talking about it with dads is like, are you being the fucking man? And is there proof? And it doesn't mean that you have to solve the shit all the time. But it's like, are you showing up as the person that your wife wants to date? And if you're showing
Mm.
up as that person, that is within our control, where we have, lack of a better word, planted the seed for those kind of spaces, for those connection points. That sounds really weird when we're talking about sex, but those connection points with your partner, because you're showing up as the person that she needs. And that's what I see as being the man. That's what
Mhm.
my thing is like, I've got it written up above the computer. Like, be the fucking man for your tribe. And
Mm.
for most of, for my family especially, it's holding space. It's got nothing to do with how physically strong I am and I can do, because we move houses, we're renters. It's like, because I can move the whole house myself, like whoop de do. And then like I can solve problems because that's what I like to do. But working through it the last couple of years, I would say, it's been more of that, like you said, that holding space. Is
Mhm.
That's what my kids appreciate the most, and what Kat appreciates the most. So everything that, because we want to have, from a male perspective, they want the frustration piece. I would say this sounds really weird, but the frustration piece with a partner when their spouse is going through menopause is they don't know how to help.
Yeah.
Like that, and it causes like this huge frustration, which frustration comes out in anger, like quick snaps, like all those kinds of reactions. So it's like, how can we spin it back around and be like, get them back into flow, lack of a better way, get them back into that area where they know there's a problem there that they've got and they can fix it. And for the men listening, or who are partners listening, spin it around and go, am I being the person, the man, the woman, the partner? Am
Mm.
I being the best version of that to support the tribe? And I think it would
Mhm.
remove that frustration of us trying to solve the problem from our partner's perspective. Like, I want to help you. It's like, how best can I help you? And they'll show you and then collect proof. Like,
Yeah.
are you doing it? It sounds really weird. And I get a lot of kickback from it, but the collecting proof of
Yeah.
you being the fucking man, lack of a better word, is almost probably the best way to plant the seed, fertilize it, water it, and create those connection points and that deep connection again, where your wife kind of wants to date you again. It sounds really weird. And then the sex will happen whenever it happens, because that deep connection's back, which is what was there at the start. I guess
Mhm.
that's a bit of a tangent, but I don't know if you get what I'm trying to put out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And one thing that I've kind of often considered too, right, is like, okay, I'm gonna grow old. That's,
Mm.
God willing, right? Like if I'm lucky and blessed to make it into my 70s and 80s and 90s and beyond, um, my parts are going to stop working at some point. And
Yeah.
and so are my wives. And like again, God willing that, we make it there and both of us are around to that long for that long. Um, so eventually I'm going to go through a transition where if my parts aren't working, then maybe there's other ways that I can connect and have intimacy with
Mm.
with my wife. And that's something that been kind of um, really exploring a lot more lately. And it's been a really beautiful enrichment the one thing I will say, I think, in terms of how can I be the man, for me, that looks like really being aware of my own inner triggers and my own sort of trauma responses. Because
Yeah.
say if my spouse is having what we kind of call in the perimenopause community flip switch rage,
Mm.
like the rage can be real, you know. And it was funny, like my wife and I were walking home from the gym the other day, and she asked a question about why she can't modify an exercise on her program on her app or something like that. And I made some smart ass answer about it. And in that moment, I could just feel the rage. I could just feel it, you know. And one of my trauma responses around angry people, because that's how I grew up, is I was around angry people. So to stay safe, I would freeze. You know,
Mhm.
we had that whole flight, freeze, fawn type stress responses. And I think for men, it really, I think it's been ultimately so helpful for me to go through my own therapy, my own inner work, and understanding, oh shit, like how much of this is actually my side of the street here that I'm,
Yeah.
you know, that I'm not keeping clean, you know, and being aware of that, being aware of my triggers, and and accepting myself, my own humanity, um, accepting my wife and her humanity, I
Mm.
think is one way that I sort of really show up and be the man, right? Because it's no help if you know, say if she's in a moment of flip switch rage and I'm just frozen completely. It's just in my own little, you know, my little inner child is just completely frozen in that moment. And you know, that's me. And I can see other, you know, other men might have other stress responses that are fight, right? So it's like a flip into a whatever, and then it just becomes this big fight, and then you lose sight of that connection. um so yeah, I think on the one hand, and I don't think this is where you're going with it, but it's kind of where my line of thought was going as I was hearing what you were saying, is like, if I can show up and be the man, then my wife will want to date me, and my wife will want to like have have sex with me,
Pretty much
basically.
it. That's pretty much
And
what I was saying.
right?
Yeah.
And you know, not that it's not that,
Yeah.
but I think also too, like, there's, I think for men, I at least, yeah, for men, for me, there's been such an opportunity to really connect on a deeper level that's beyond sexual, that's really embodied in like in a very deep emotional level, um, which it almost feels just maybe even more so, if I'm being honest, more, I don't know what the word is, more profound than anything on a sexual level. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, for me at least, you'd be the man, and then that might lead to more sexy time with my wife. On the other hand, there's this whole other world of connection and, you know, playfulness and joy that can come when we as men are connected with our emotions, when we stop escaping from our emotions, when we stop running from them, when we stop numbing them through various means. um, and that, I think, well, I can only speak for my own relationship. That's done wonders for our marriage, for our relationship. And you know, the intimate time we've had together has been less frequent, but far more profound, like far
Yeah.
deeper, way more connected. And I would rather have that over more frequency, if I'm being honest, if I had to pick one or the other. So that was, yeah. Anyway, so
It's good. Like,
I didn't think I'd be talking about that, but hey, here we
yeah, I
are.
know. It's kind of weird because it's like, well, it's not weird, but when we're in the way I'm kind of describe it, like it's not easy for us to talk about. We can talk about this stuff and the deep connection points, but it's kind of like this is why I want to build this thing called Space Builders, where it's going to be really hard. Well, let's say like you said, work on your inner stuff, like your own stuff. Like what is the story you're acting out? It's really hard to see that story when there's no space. And if we're looking at like life right now, and I keep saying it with everyone I talk to, like I'm finding it really hard to do this thing. Like, yeah, because your life's full. Everyone's life's full. We got to make a trade off. Like, where are we going to seek the trade offs? But it's still like just creating. This is why I like this like proof and counting wins and doing it daily. Like it sounds really, really bad on paper. Like it's literally my thing is, did I have my 5 minutes deep connection point with Kat today? And 5 minutes sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's kind of like releasing the expectation of like, I'm going to do an hour every day. That's a lot. And if you fall short, for most men, it's just like, I fell short. I didn't show up as my best self today. So my thing has always been like, it's just the 5 minute, sounds the 5 minute Cat check-in. It's like where I just sit down and just ask how her day's gone, let her unpack the day. That for me has one, like rewire the story that I'm showing up. So this is just to help guys, like a really simple tool you could kind of play with, like a 5 minute check-in with your partner to let them unpack whatever's going on, brain dump whatever's going on, or whatever things that are in their head that you might be able to tick off the box for them if they need to. But that for me took the frustration away. Let's say that, like where it released that pressure and that unknown thing is like, where am I not showing up? Like, where am I missing something? Which is what could be going on when there's not lack of intimacy. And I was like, I need to collect proof for myself that I'm showing up as the best version of me and supporting the tribe, and the tribe being the family and Kat. And something as little as that for me made a huge difference. And Kat brought it up one time. She's like, you've just been way more calmer recently and way less frantic. It has, this sounds really weird, but Theo potentially getting assessed for autism has helped a lot, because helping kids with autism is always about flow versus force, letting go, and not having expectations on anything. And my whole life at the moment is like, I'm just going to live that life because that sounds amazing. So I just want to do that. And yeah, and then doing that and collecting wins around that. It's like, these are the things in my control that I can do. And then other stuff will happen because it happens. But I know I've got proof of that I'm showing up as the person I want to be.
Me too.
Yeah, I think
I want to do that.
that inner work stuff, it's scary for people. But something as little as that 5 minute rule could be like the gateway, like something really small that you can do every day, which won't be as scary, and start creating this for that swap.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, like
It's like, I can do that.
right.
That's not that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, my life's full. I want to support, but I don't know how. It's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a quick win. And you can always go bigger, but 5 minutes is.
Yeah. Right. Scrolling our phones for 5 minutes, probably longer. Right.
It's always like, we know it too. When you talk to people, they're like, I don't have any time. And you sort of just wait. And it just clicks like, yeah, but I am on my phone a lot. I was talking to someone that said that they're on there. They work a full like a full time job, and they're on their phone 8 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like it's easy because it's safety.
Mm. Mhm.
And then like if you take so mine is still 2 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
If I take 5 minutes of that,
Yeah.
it's an easy win
You know, that's actually in
to plant the seed.
it's an interesting segue. That's an interesting point you bring up. Because I think, we're both like online coaches, right? So, um,
Mm,
for me, like being on social media, being on my phone is I can easily like weave a story to myself that like, oh yeah, this is what I got to do. Like, this is part of the job, right? But like, you know, if I'm being honest with myself, like yes, however, like I don't need to be on my phone for as long as I am. And
mm,
man, like those things are freaking hardwired. Like our brains are just like they're built to be addictive, right? And they kind of
yeah.
work on the same brain pathways as other substance, addictions and whatnot. And I think w- in the context of that conversation of like how can I be supportive to my wife can tell a difference in me when I've spent too long on my phone versus not. She's like, I just feel like you're here, but you're not here, um, or you're just distracted. You're just not with me, and man, there's some weeks where I'm better at it than others. It is just admittedly still a struggle for me. I haven't cracked the code on that one yet, but I'm trying my best to place boundaries around that screen use and whatnot. But I think for me, it's always been I don't want to be honest with myself, but I have to be, with like some of the behaviors that are on my
Mm,
side of the street that I'm like, because this marriage is a two-way street, right? And like, if there's a problem in it, or if like say, it's so bringing back to perimenopause. So perimenopause is never the problem. Like if it's creating friction in the marriage, it's not because of the hormones, right? Like it's a
yeah.
very natural and normal thing, right, to go through. I think it will the reactions and the struggle with it come from pre-existing problems. Now this is like I'm using a data set of one really, and of one my own, because I don't like I don't talk about my clients' sex lives or anything like that, right? Like we're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, like I think for me, like, okay, like what can I control here? Like I can't control my wife or anyone else. Like I can really
Mm,
I'm like barely even in control of myself, right? There's things that I'm completely powerless over within myself. And um, being honest with I think you call them safety behaviors. Like
yeah.
what are my things, my opportunities and my behaviors, and how might that be impacting our marriage here? And like, and I think the phone is like one of those things where like it's a tough one though. Like it's tough for me to do that. I'm still a work in progress on that, but yeah, like I think when a partner, say a woman in perimenopause, is going through that transition and just everything is getting harder, which it is, um, when the spouse isn't there emotionally, um,
Mm,
being present because they're distracted on their phones or whatever it is, can cause a huge issue, right? It can make a woman feel like she's alone in it. And I think there's a period of time in my life, in our marriage, thankfully it's in the past now, but where I got really I dove deep into work stuff, and I wasn't as present for her when she needed me, and I'll never make that mistake again. Um, just
yeah.
so I think in the context of this conversation of like, how can I best support my wife? I think it always, for me, just always comes back to, okay, like, what am I doing? But I like what you said
Yeah.
there about the 5 minutes. I think self-reflection time too is really important. I've always that's something I've always done, not by choice, just by nature of being left alone for like
Mm.
as a child, like being neglected.
We're
I don't
laughing, but we're
recommend
like,
it. I don't
isn't
recommend
that
it.
funny?
But yeah, like on the one sense, it left some really deep abandonment wounds. On the other sense,
Yeah.
man, did it ever leave a lot of time for reflection. So I've always been somebody who's like I've reflected a lot, and I think like having stillness and having like even just 5 minutes um,
Yeah.
of quiet reflection time, it can be so helpful. Not on the phone.
It, yeah. It's kind of like, can you hold space for yourself before you worry about holding space for anybody else?
I don't think you can. I
No.
don't think you can hold space for anyone else if you can't hold space for yourself. Not in a true way.
No,
For
because
me.
there's under.
For me, I can't.
Yeah, I agree. Like when I feel like I am not as in a coaching sense, well, I'm not showing up as the focused version of me. Like the best version of me is holding space and not forcing things. It's just letting them people work through whatever they got to work through and find flow, and then usually it clicks for them. But when I'm in like the advice monster mode, that's what I
Mm.
call it my advice monster.
That's a
It's
good.
like
I like
yeah,
that.
and it's kind of like I am not holding space for myself. So
Mm.
I go and like turn it up to like volume 12. Like so I'm not holding space for myself. So I'm just gonna like just try and solve everyone's problems to make myself feel good. Which
Mm.
is like it's not like it's bad, but most of the time the advice monster trips up their own journey of solving their own problems, which means it's going to stick,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is really hard to do because
Yeah.
people a lot of like in the sense of coaches, a lot of people come for the solutions. But if it's so easy to get, it's very easy to lose when people figure it out themselves. Like you can guide. This is why I like the whole idea of being a guide. You can guide, but they, lack of a better word, they're the ones who do the battle or the journey.
Mm.
The
Hmm.
stuff they learn creates tags that will allow them to bring it up again whenever they need it. So I think, yeah, the advice monster, like putting that name to it, made it so much easier. Like as soon as I
Yeah.
started doing, like, oh, I know I'm not creating space for my shit right now. I've got to go back and do some stuff. And also,
Yeah.
it's like a click in my head. I'm like, oh, oh yeah, I've gone a bit too far there.
Yeah. Oh man, the advice monster. I'm gonna use that because man, I find myself there, probably too often than I'd like to admit. The interesting thing about the advice for me for the advice monster is obviously in this career path of mine,
Mm,
with the knowledge and expertise I've gained over the years, is like now that my wife's going through it, it's like, oh, oh, you're going through that. Oh, do you know what that is? That is this, that, and the other thing, right? So, like, yeah, here's what you could do. Like, you could just like do this, that, and like, man, I've really had to check myself because, like, and there's been times where like I'll literally ask, like, okay, do you want like Colin, the perimenopause coach here, or do you need
mm,
like Colin, your husband, here? And sometimes, like rarely, but sometimes it's like, actually, yeah, I want Colin the perimenopause coach.
yeah,
Very rarely though, very rarely.
I would
So
say the same.
that's
Yeah,
so I can only imagine how rare that would be for a man who doesn't have
yeah,
that same expertise. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, because on the one, and I mean, I'm not trying to say I know everything, but I, I know what I know. I also don't know what I don't know. But even with my profession and whatnot, it's still, it's and my wife is going through it. She still doesn't need that from me. What she needs
mm,
is like a husband who's just can listen and support, and sometimes it's just like, we call it a nervy hug. where it's like
Mm,
it's a nervy hug. So what that means, like a nervous system hug. So she'll literally just press her back up into me, and I just like hold her, and like the back and her spine gets like cradled into me, and is like good for the nervous system. Sometimes that's all it is. Like I just need to be held for like 2 minutes.
yeah,
That's it.
like Kat's gonna hate me for this one, but it's like hers is me just having my hand on her foot,
Yeah.
like something it's that small, and it's like
Hmm.
it's usually always it's weird. The small things that we would just dismiss are usually come sometimes the really really big ones, and that's just like a you can see the tension just drop from her
Hmm.
straight away. And like even just thinking about it now, I know or we haven't had a space to sit down and do that because the way I work, like like right now, we started this call at 3:30 a.m. The way I work is I get up
Oh,
super early.
nice.
Yeah. So I do all my stuff before the kids wake up so I can be available for whatever's going on with them. But yeah. So that means I go to bed at 7:30. So those
Hmm.
connection points we had then have kind of disappeared. So now we've been working through like how do we try and bring them back, and what does that kind of look like? Where we're going to shift stuff again. Like it's working really well for work, which is great, but it's missing this whole piece, which is like this connection piece with Cat, which is something that's so small but so huge. Where
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
because if we literally don't have that, yeah, again, space, holding that space where we
Hmm.
can talk or just sit and read or just do nothing and just be in that area with
Hmm.
each other. So what? So I've got to go to another call in a minute. But what do you think? What are some tools or ideas, or a tool or idea that we could leave people with today? In the sense of, I know we've literally the space holding is pretty much the biggest tool we're sort of talking about. But what's something
Hmm.
else you think that we should be talked about that we haven't really touched on yet?
Hmm. One thing that comes to mind is so I ran a perimenopause webinar way back, if, like several months ago,
Mm,
and we went through the whole list, the whole like it was a gamut of list of symptoms that happen, and one of them when I was doing this research that really struck me was that women feel unlovable in this phase of their lives. And that one was a hard one for me to consider, you know. So I think like just well, maybe we have touched on this, but like just like a really like try to see like what okay, well, you're asking what are some tools that we could talk about that we haven't talked about. I think really just seeing your wife as a human being and having a human experience, and it's fucking hard. Like it's hard, having compassion for and compassion not is not the same as pity. It's not like, oh, I feel bad for you. You're going through this thing and that must really suck. That's pity, right? Because we don't but compassion is like, I see you. I see your humanity here, and I see that you're suffering and that this is hard, and man, this is just I get it. This is really fucking hard.
mm,
Um I think that skill of having compassion for another human who's the person that we love the most probably in this world is huge. And the flip side of that too, and I think like my wife and I talk about this, is about having self-compassion
mm.
because it's interesting. She's I don't know if she can hear me or if it's okay if I share this, but we were talking about how we were having this discussion like man, I don't know if it's possible to actually have compassion for another human being if you don't have compassion for yourself. You don't understand, if you don't accept your own humanity, your own imperfection, um, first. If we're really hard on ourselves, then what we think is compassion for another human is just pity,
Mm.
which is unhelpful, you know? Yeah, I think that would be, so I think self-compassion, and so compassion for self, compassion for the people in our lives is like one of those tools that we haven't talked about that I think could be really impactful.
I think like that's a good way not to leave it hanging, but it's a good like seed planting. Like the way you said it too was in the like it's hard to have compassion for other people unless you have your own self compassion, which is like what story are you playing out every day? And what is the subconscious stuff? Which is what I talk with dads. It's like, what is this shadow stuff that is literally sabotaging everything that you're doing? So
Mm.
yeah, I think that's super powerful in a sense. Like it's not really giving them a tool, but it's giving them a place to go. It's like an open loop. Go
Mhm.
seek out ways that you can learn your story. Because once you understand your own
Yeah.
story, you can better help. Well, not help people, but you can better hold space for people's other people's stories. Because, like you said, you got that. Like you can see people for what they
Yeah.
really are better because you see yourself for what you really are better, and you can change your story, whatever the story is. You can still change it.
Yeah, totally. Can I add a word of caution?
Yeah.
So the word of caution here is like, and I've been through this myself, so I totally get it. And I see others doing this, is like when we start on this journey of self-exploration of like understanding what are my shadows, and then like in doing the work, our lives get so much better. The word of caution is, don't go thinking that you can just, oh babe, I see you're struggling with that thing here, have you like think about what kind of shadows that might be at play here,
Yeah.
right? And so we started preaching this like inner work gospel. um so the caution would for me is just like, man, I've made that mistake, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, God, yeah, people aren't, like that was my bad, I shouldn't have done that. So and then instead I just, okay, bring it back to me, let it begin with me, right? Like, let's just mind my own business and keep doing my work, and trust that people get there on their own, kind of thing.
It's very
But yeah.
natural, I would say, with that too. Like when you start doing, yeah, like the inner work, you learn very quickly and things change very quickly for the better. And when that stuff happens, you just want to tell everyone and people, like, yeah, fair, good. That's such a good idea. Like, caution on it because people will sort of wig out and not understand what's going on. And
Mhm.
they will, like, you might get a reaction that you would not fully expect.
Yeah.
So remember, the inner work is inner work. It's for you. And then just let people see through proof
Mhm.
of the change of you just being the better version of who you are. That's a way of doing it where you can kind of protect yourself as you're going through the inner work because you don't want to have that thing where you're like super excited, like I just found this really cool thing about me. Like human design and gene
Mhm.
keys, I went deep into that. And I was like, Kat, look at all this stuff I learned. And she's like, what is this? What is all this stuff? I'm like, oh yeah. Um, let's take a step back. So that kind of stuff, like, yeah, it can be very not scary. It's scary is not
I
the
think
right word, but people will not understand because they're not in the same place. If that makes sense. So that's where I keep leading into like proof. Like do the inner work, show up as this new version of you, which is
yeah.
this better version of whatever it is going to be, and then the proof is in the pudding. People will see it anyway. and then they'll say,
Yeah.
they'll tell you. And even if they don't, it doesn't matter because it's inner work.
Yeah. Yeah. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people find you, Colin? Where is the best place to find
I think
you?
the best place is just through Instagram, at coachcolin.fit, 1L. So at COLIN. Wait, no, I'm saying that wrong. At COACHCOLIN.fit. Yeah.
And I'll link it in the show notes too, for everyone. And go follow his Instagram, because your Instagram game is next level. There's like tons of really good content on there for women going through menopause, and for like partners. Like even just going and reading it is like a really good snapshot of learning things on like what they potentially could be going through. Like it's a good knowledge hub. Like it's some next level. So go check it out. Anything you want to say, Colin, before we wrap up?
No, I think we said it all, man. Yeah, I appreciate you. Appreciate you letting me be on here as a guest. I had a lot of fun. So yeah.
Well,
thank you.
Again, because we've got heaps of other stuff to talk about, which would be cool.
Part 2. Cool, man.
Yeah. All right, everybody. See you later.
All right. Take care.